Something quite sad has happened recently, and it's due to circumstances that are very intriguing and very different to what you'd usually see. Street FC have resigned from their league, which is the Southern League Division 1 South, the 8th tier of English football, and there's no budget problems, there's no ground grading problems. They have just resigned because there is a lack of volunteers, which is something that is a reality of non-league football, that non-league football is so based on volunteers, especially at the lower levels, but you rarely see clubs having to resign from a league because of a lack of volunteers, especially when they say there's no problems with the budget or with ground grading. Anyway, we're going to be looking into this situation in this video. So first of all, this video is sponsored by OneFootball, which is a great app to stay up to date with loads of different football news. Unfortunately, there isn't information from this tier of football on OneFootball, but there is plenty of information from lots and lots of different other leagues from all around the world, stretching from Premier League down to the National League and in loads of different countries as well. All sorts of information such as stats, news, scores, fixtures, league tables, all sorts of different things. If you want to download OneFootball, the link is in the top line of the description. It's a little bit of background information on Street FC. They're from a town called Street, which is near Glastonbury in Somerset, and they're founded in 1880, so they're a very old club. Last season, the club were promoted from the Wessex League and went on an unbelievable 26-match winning streak during that season, which sealed their title and got them up to the 8th tier, where currently they're actually just in mid-table in about 10th position. But on the 2nd of April, their chairman James Court announced that they're going to resign from their league due to a lack of volunteers. Said in a statement that the committee believed that by taking a step back, we are securing the future of the club. Whilst there has been some inevitable reaction, and I fully appreciate some people feel let down and disappointed, we feel this extremely tough decision is in the club's best long-term interests. There was no concern with budgets or ground grading, but the search for new volunteers to step up the vital roles hasn't materialised, and as a result, we are not in a position to cope with the demands of Southern League football. The management team leaving was a direct result of this, which is understandable. However, the club now has an opportunity to pull together, continues to try and fill these vital roles and rebuild for the future. The supporters should still feel encouraged, as we have some excellent facilities, an exciting crop of young players which will hopefully benefit the club for years to come. Now, as the chairman says, taking a step back could help secure the club's long-term future, but I think there's things that are deeper issues that they're sort of glossing over a little bit here. Now, the chairman himself announced on the 13th of February that he will be leaving at the club's AGM in May. So he's on his way out of the club. And also the management of Rich Fay and Nathan Rudge, they announced in March that they were going to step down at the end of the season. They said they are devastated to be standing down at the end of the season. They said the club can't match our ambition, and with a degree of uncertainty around roles being filled next season, it now gives the chance for a new chairperson and the committee to re-evaluate, which that was put out before all of this about the lack of volunteers was announced on the 2nd of April. So this was sort of giving an insight into the uncertainty at the club and the fact that there are a lot of key roles that aren't being filled. We'll have a look into that now. So as a lot of you will know, volunteers at non-league level are very, very important. Clubs a lot of the time are built around what volunteers can produce, and the strain on volunteers at a lot of clubs is quite high. So there needs to be a lot of volunteers that can fulfill loads of different roles that can essentially keep a club going. Now, at higher levels, these roles will be paid. There will be paid staff that are paid to do these roles. Because there is a lot more money at these clubs, it becomes a lot easier to attract people to these positions, and people that are going to do more work outside of just a match day. This obviously makes sense of why clubs at a higher level are at a higher level. Now, when you drop down through the leagues, more and more roles become voluntary, and that drops right down to the bottom of non-league, where pretty much everyone is a volunteer. Clubs are amateur, no one's paid anything, and that's where the real scale of pay drops right down to nothing. At lower levels of non-league, such as where Street are in the 8th tier, this is where a lot of the players are going to be paid. This is a semi-professional league generally, so there'll be some that will be amateur and some that will be semi-professional, but then there will be other roles that will be voluntary. A lot of these off the pitch roles will all be voluntary because obviously you want to put as much money as possible into the playing squad. Now, Street did actually put out for a volunteer to come in as fixture secretary, so that's doing all sorts of things like confirming fixtures when there are postponements, having to rearrange things, also dealing with players' fines, as well as a whole host of different things. It's a very important role, so if they can't find someone to do that, then it becomes very difficult. Now, other voluntary roles at clubs like Street, for example, the chairman and vice chairman, they aren't voluntary roles. With the chairman and vice chairman both saying they'll be leaving ahead of next season. If they can't find anyone new to come in and take those roles up, then they could be in a lot of trouble. Now, the only voluntary position that I could see anywhere online that they'd actually asked for someone to come and do was the fixture secretary voluntary position. But in terms of finding a new chairman, that's probably not something that you put online, so that would make sense why it's not been put anywhere. Now, there hasn't been an announcement about a new chairman coming in, so we'll see how the club goes moving forward. But I don't personally see how that would affect the league that they play in. Worcester City resigned from the National League North a couple of years ago. They were automatically relegated down 3 tiers. Now, they were finishing inside the relegation zone, which I believe got them one of those 3 relegations. The voluntary resignation from the league gained another 2 relegations, which is why they dropped from the 6th tier down to the 9th tier. So essentially, Street could be looking at, rather than just going back down to the Wessex League, which is where they were last season and where they have been for a number of years previous to that, they could be looking at potentially going down multiple leagues, which could be a big problem for them, and it could see the club move backwards a lot. Now, in the statement that the chairman announced that there's a lot of exciting young players and great facilities, the facilities obviously stay, but with the good young players that are going to benefit the club in the long run, will those players want to stay at a club that is going to voluntarily drop down through leagues when in the league that they're currently in, they're actually doing quite well? And in previous years to that, they've been progressing as an ambitious club, moving up a league and potentially looking to go on further. Now they're sort of changing those ambitions and they're dropping back down. Are players going to be as attracted to go and sign for that club? I'm not too sure, and that comes down to volunteers as well. Will volunteers want to go and work for a club that is voluntarily dropping down through leagues? Based on stats released at the end of 2018 for the first half of the 18-19 season, Street have the 77th highest average attendance of 148 of the whole of the 8th tier of English football. So there's 140 clubs at the 8th tier, so they're around about halfway in terms of attendances, which gives them a decent pool of people to pick from to basically try and get them to volunteer at the club. I'm not saying it's the case you have to pick from people to be a volunteer. You can't force someone to be a volunteer, but the laws of averages, the more people that you have at a ground, the more likely it is that you're going to find people that are going to want to volunteer. So they've been unable to find enough volunteers, but all the other clubs around them, they're still going. Yes, the strain might be very high on these volunteers, but they are still going. Now, going back to what was said previously about there being a lack of budget and ground grading concerns, the lack of budget concerns, that doesn't quite make sense to me personally, because if you're going to be dropping through some leagues but you've got no problems with budget, usually the reasons that you drop down through leagues is because of a lack of money. If you've got enough money to stay at a level but not enough volunteers, then surely it would make sense to allocate some of that money that would be used to pay the players and the actual staff that need paying, so that would be used to pay volunteers and make those into paid roles. And that's a non-normal sort of thing at non-league level, but if it helps the club survive and allows them to stay competitive at that level and actually stay in that league, then surely that is more important than having a slightly higher playing budget. But then again, you could look at it an opposite way. If you're decreasing the playing budget, then you're going to be less competitive. So that's a sort of trade-off, and that could be a reason as to why they decided to do what they did. But regardless, there is, in my opinion, there is information that we have not been told, but that's okay. That happens at every single club. They can't release absolutely every bit of information about every situation and every problem that is going on. But I do hope that the club does rebuild itself, finds the amount of volunteers that are necessary, and does rebuild in the future. This could be part of a big plan to try and rebuild the club in a slightly different way. Who knows? Hopefully this club will continue, and it is better to see a club resigning from a league and dropping down than just altogether going out of business, because that is the worst situation. If they've anticipated a problem before it becomes a real issue, then that could be seen as a positive. And if they have got excellent facilities and some good young players, they can keep them involved, then that could help the club go and progress in the future. So yeah, fingers crossed the club does progress. And what do you think of this whole situation? Let me know in the comment section down below. If you have enjoyed this video, remember to hit that like button and click subscribe if you haven't already. That would mean a lot, because we are nearly getting to 15,000 subscribers, which is what we aim to get to by the end of the season. We're not far away now, and if you could help me get there, that would be absolutely awesome. You may have seen that I've been nominated for a football blogging award. I'm in the finals for the best non-league content creator category, and if you'd like to go and vote for me, the link to that will be in the second line of the description. That'd be absolutely awesome if you could go and vote, and that would really help the channel out. But yeah, I hope to see you in the next video, and thanks for watching.